Tommy has always been one of the most unpredictable characters in the Power universe, but behind every reckless move, there's always a reason. On the surface, it might look like Tommy is going back to New York just to stir the pot, but if you peel back the layers, it's clear his motives run much deeper. To understand why Tommy would risk everything he has in Chicago, we have to look at what New York means to him not just as a city, but as the core of his identity. At his heart, Tommy has always been defined by loyalty. Loyalty to Ghost, loyalty to family, loyalty to the code of the streets. But that same loyalty has been both his strength and his downfall. When Ghost betrayed him, when Tasha lied to him, when Lakeisha was taken from him, those betrayals didn't just break his trust, they left scars that shaped every decision he's made since. Chicago gave him a chance to start over, but he never truly let go of the weight he carried from New York. Returning there isn't just about business, it's about unfinished emotional business. It's about facing the ghosts, both literal and metaphorical, that have been haunting him since the original Power ended. Another big factor in Tommy's motives is his hunger for recognition. In Chicago, he's carving out a name for himself. But it's still new territory. People see him as the outsider, the guy from New York trying to muscle into their world. Every deal, every alliance, every bullet fired feels like a test he has to pass just to prove he belongs. But back in New York, his reputation is already carved in stone. People know who Tommy Egan is. They know what he's capable of. He doesn't have to explain himself there. His name alone carries weight. And for someone like Tommy, who thrives on respect and fear, that kind of recognition is addictive. Going back to New York is like stepping back into a kingdom where he was already a crown prince. Instead of struggling to be seen as a king in Chicago, there's also a personal motive tied directly to family. With JP and DMAC now in his life, Tommy has started to show a softer side, one that fans aren't used to seeing. He wants to protect them, guide them, and build something that lasts. But the irony is that his past in New York is the exact thing that could destroy this newfound family. Deep down, Tommy knows that running from his past never works. It always catches up. So his return to New York might not be about chasing power, but about facing everything head-on, so it doesn't come back to hurt the people he's finally learning to care for. In a twisted way, this return could be less about ambition and more about love for family, love for loyalty, and love for the memory of what he lost. But here's where it gets interesting. Tommy's motives are never one-dimensional. He's not just going back for closure or power. He's going back because he knows New York still holds unfinished opportunities. Think about it. Ghost may be gone, but his empire left cracks, debts, and enemies. Tariq is carving out his own path. Tasha is still hiding, and the St. Patrick name continues to shape the city. Tommy sees all of this and knows there's room for him to step back in, to reclaim a piece of what was once his. This isn't just nostalgia, it's strategy. Tommy might play the hot-headed gangster, but he's smarter than people give him credit for. He knows timing is everything, and right now, New York might be vulnerable enough for him to make a move. Of course, there's another layer: revenge. Tommy has always carried grudges close to his chest, and going back to New York could also mean settling scores that never got resolved. Whether it's enemies from Ghost's past, rivals who thought he was gone for good, or even a confrontation with Tariq, the city offers endless opportunities for payback. And if there's one thing we know about Tommy, it's that he never forgets. His return isn't just about what he wants to gain, it's about what others are going to lose once he shows up on their doorstep. All of this creates a dangerous mix of motives: loyalty, identity, family, power, and revenge. Together, they make Tommy's decision to go back to New York feel less like a simple plot twist and more like the inevitable collision of his past and present. He's a man who can't fully move forward until he's faced everything that came before. And in true power fashion, that means blood will almost certainly be spilled. So while some fans might see this return as Tommy risking everything he's built in Chicago, the truth is, Tommy doesn't see it that way. In his mind, New York isn't. A risk, it's a necessity. It's where his story started, and it's where, one way or another, it has to continue. The motives are layered, the stakes are higher than ever, and the fallout could change the entire Power universe. Tommy's return to New York isn't just about the past, it's a move that sets the stage for the future of the entire Power universe. Whenever Tommy makes a major decision, it's rarely self-contained. His actions ripple outward, affecting allies, enemies, and even people who don't realize their lives are about to be changed. That's why this moment is so important. It's not just about Tommy going home, it's about what comes next. And the clues sprinkled throughout season 2 already point to explosive events waiting on the horizon. One of the clearest hints comes in the form of foreshadowing conversations. When other characters in Chicago talk about Ghost, Tariq, or even New York itself, the tone always shifts. These moments feel almost like warnings, as if the writers are telling us that stepping back into that world won't be easy for Tommy. For example, when Diamond questions Tommy's loyalty or Claudia doubts his ability to build something lasting, it's not just about Chicago. It's a mirror being held up to Tommy's entire history. The foreshadowing here is simple. If Tommy can't keep his new alliances stable in Chicago, how can he hope to survive the much deadlier web of enemies waiting in New York? Another layer of foreshadowing is tied to family. Tommy's connection with JP and D-Mac is one of the few things grounding him right now. But what happens when he brings New York baggage back to Chicago? The writing makes it clear that Tommy's personal and professional lives can't stay separate forever. His enemies know how to hit where it hurts, and New York is filled with people who remember his weaknesses. If Tommy makes noise there, it's only a matter of time before trouble follows him back. This sets up a possible tragedy, the idea that, by facing his past, Tommy might unintentionally destroy his future. It's a haunting possibility, but when the Power universe has never shied away from then there's the bigger picture, the crossover potential. Power Book 2, Ghost is still running strong, and Tariq is carving his own empire. The second Tommy steps foot back in New York, the doors swing wide open for their paths to cross again. Imagine the tension of that meeting. Tariq, the son of Ghost, trying to prove he's not a boy anymore, and Tommy, the man who loved Ghost like a brother, but also held him responsible for so much pain. The foreshadowing for this is already present in how often Ghost's legacy is mentioned in both shows. It feels less like a possibility and more like a promise. Fans know that a collision between Tommy and Tariq isn't just wanted, it's inevitable. And when it happens, it won't just be about business. It will be about loyalty, betrayal, and whether Ghost's son can survive a showdown with his old friend turned enemy. We can also see hints of foreshadowing in the way New York is described throughout Force. It's never shown as a place of peace or opportunity. Instead, it's framed as dangerous, volatile, and unpredictable. Every reference to New York carries weight, almost as if the city itself is waiting for Tommy to return. This is important because in the Power universe, locations aren't just backdrops, they're living, breathing forces that shape the story. New York swallowed Ghost, tested Tariq, and now it's calling Tommy back. That alone foreshadows that. His journey there will be less about victory and more about survival. One of the most chilling bits of foreshadowing comes from Tommy himself. In moments of reflection, when he talks about his past losses, there's always a quiet sense that he knows his path will end violently. Tommy has never been the type to imagine a long life or a happy ending. The foreshadowing here suggests that his return to New York could be the beginning of the end. Not necessarily immediate death, but the start of a spiral that leaves him cornered by the very ghosts he's been trying to outrun. The writers have always painted Tommy as a tragic figure, fierce, loyal, but doomed by his inability to let go of the past. Going back to New York feels like the ultimate expression of that tragedy. and then we have the possibility of alliances. If Tommy steps into New York, he's bound to cross paths with old faces, both friendly and hostile. Could he find common ground with Tariq? Could he finally confront Tasha? Could other Power Book characters like Brayden or Kane be drawn into his orbit? These aren't just what-if scenarios. They're logical extensions of the foreshadowing that's already been laid down. The Power universe thrives on crossover moments, and Tommy's return to New York is the perfect storm to bring all the stories together. So what does this all mean? The foreshadowing is layered, but the message is clear. Tommy's journey isn't about a peaceful homecoming. It's about igniting the fuse that connects Chicago, New York, and every storyline in between. It's about setting up confrontations that fans have been waiting for since the original Power ended. And most of all, it's about showing us that no matter how far Tommy runs, the past will always find him. His return to New York doesn't just foreshadow trouble, it guarantees it. Tommy Egan is not just going back to New York, he's walking straight into the heart of his past, a place that built him, broke him, and still holds the ghosts of everything he once lost. But what if this return isn't just about unfinished business? What if every step back into New York is filled with clues about where Power Book 4 Force is really heading? Fans are asking why Tommy would risk everything he's built in Chicago to revisit the city that nearly destroyed him, and the answer lies in the small, hidden details most people missed. Tommy's story has always been one of chaos, loyalty, and betrayal. When we first saw him step into Chicago at the end of Power, it felt like a fresh start. A new city, a new empire, and a chance to carve out his own name without the shadow of James St. Patrick, better known as Ghost. But by the time Season 2 of Force wrapped up, it became clear that Chicago wasn't a clean slate. Instead, it became a war zone. Tommy tried to build alliances, but every move pulled him deeper into conflict. From dealing with the Flynn family's grip on the drug trade to managing his complicated bond with Diamond and the CBI, Tommy's life has been anything but stable. What really drives this moment, though, isn't just the battles Tommy fought in Chicago, it's the emotional weight he still carries from New York. Tommy has always been a man split between two worlds, the loyal friend who would die for Ghost, and the ruthless enforcer who would kill without hesitation. Ghost is gone, but his shadow hasn't disappeared. In fact, every decision Tommy makes in Force seems to echo his time in New York, almost as if he's chasing or running from the memory of it. That's why his return to the city is such a powerful turning point. It's not just another location on the map. It's the place where he lost everything, from Ghost's brotherhood to Lakish's love. The biggest clue lies in how Season 2 framed Tommy's choices. Chicago gave him power, but not peace. Every alliance was shaky. Every deal came with a knife pointed at his back. Diamond wanted trust, but often questioned Tommy's motives. Claudia tried to manipulate him into sharing her vision of dominance, but Tommy never played by anyone's rules but his own. And then there's JP, his half-brother, who became the emotional anchor Tommy didn't even know he needed. Despite this new sense of family, Tommy's eyes were never fully on Chicago. Subtle dialogue and quiet moments hinted that part of his heart never left New York. That's where the hidden details come in. Throughout Force, writers have layered small callbacks to Power that remind viewers of Tommy's roots. For example, his short temper and reckless loyalty often mirror moments he had with Ghost. When Tommy sits in silence after a loss, it feels like a reflection of when he lost Holly, Lakeisha, and even Ghost himself. These emotional scars are what fuel his aggression in Chicago, but they also point to why New York is more than just geography. It's memory, pain, and unfinished business rolled into one. So when we hear that Tommy is going back, it isn't just a shock value twist. It's the writer showing us that his story has come full circle. He may have left New York behind physically, but emotionally, he never did, and that's the danger. Going back means reopening wounds he never healed. It means facing people who might still see him as the reckless enforcer of Ghost's empire, rather than the boss he's tried to become. It also means the possibility of crossing paths with characters who still define the power universe, like Tasha or Tariq. These connections aren't just fan service, they're breadcrumbs that lead us to the deeper meaning of Tommy's journey. And here's the thing about Tommy, he doesn't believe in running. If there's unfinished business in New York, he's not the type to ignore it. But the big question is whether this return will give him closure, or whether it's the beginning of his downfall. Because every time Tommy has chased the past, it's ended in blood. When Tommy makes the decision to head back to New York, it's not just another road trip in the Power universe. Every little detail surrounding this move has been crafted like a puzzle piece, and when you line them up, the picture becomes clear. Tommy's past and future are colliding. What many fans missed are the subtle visual and narrative clues sprinkled throughout season 2 that foreshadow this return. The writers never show us Tommy's actions without a purpose, and the closer you look, the more you realize New York has been calling him back since the very beginning. One of the most overlooked details is his clothing. Tommy has always been known for his iconic street-style leather jackets, heavy chains, and the kind of look that screams authority without needing words. In Chicago, his wardrobe shifted ever so slightly. Neutral colors, darker tones, a more business-minded version of Tommy. But when he starts speaking about unfinished business and hints of going back east, his wardrobe takes a sharp turn back to his roots. The familiar white sneakers, the bold jackets, and the chain that catches the light in key scenes, these aren't random costume choices. They're callbacks to the Tommy who once rode with Ghost through Queens, the Tommy who built his name in New York. It's a visual cue telling us he's not just remembering his past, he's stepping back into it. Then there's the dialogue. Tommy isn't a character who wastes words, but when he does speak about Ghost or the past, it always lands heavy. In Season 2, there are small lines that almost feel like throwaway comments. He'll mention how business was run back home, or how things used to be done differently. To the casual viewer, these lines might sound like nostalgia, but for longtime fans, they're coded reminders that New York is still alive in Tommy's mind. It's not just where he came from, it's still the place he measures himself against. And that's where the symbolism digs deeper. Because every time Tommy talks about New York, it's less about a city and more about who he was when Ghost was alive. Another layer of symbolism comes through the locations tied to his journey. Chicago is wide, sprawling, and presented in force as a maze of alleys, warehouses, and unfamiliar streets. It's a place that never truly feels like home for Tommy, no matter how hard he pushes his influence. But when the show begins dropping hints of New York, even through subtle shots or background references, the energy shifts. New York isn't just another backdrop, it's shot and spoken about with a kind of reverence, almost as if the city itself is a character. This is important because in the Power universe, New York is where everything started. It's the beating heart of Ghost's empire, the stage for every betrayal, and the graveyard of every dream. To bring Tommy back there is like placing him on the same chessboard again, only this time, Ghost isn't there to guide him. And if you caught the smaller Easter eggs, you'll notice the writers didn't forget Ghost, Tasha, or even Tariq. There are specific references that feel almost like whispers of what's coming. A certain look in Tommy's eyes when Tariq's name is mentioned. The way he goes silent when the conversation shifts toward Ghost's legacy. Even the mention of Queens, though brief, hangs in the air longer than it should. These aren't accidents there. Intentional breadcrumbs leading us to believe that Tommy's storyline isn't just about building power in Chicago. It's about reconciling the ghost of Ghost himself. There's also a symbolic weight in the idea of Tommy crossing state lines. On paper, it's just geography, Chicago to New York, but narratively, it's a resurrection. It's Tommy returning to the soil where his loyalty was tested, where his brotherhood was broken, and where his destiny was first shaped. Chicago represents opportunity, but New York represents identity. And for Tommy, identity has always been more important than power. This is why, no matter how successful he becomes in Chicago, he can't ignore the pull of the past. Because to him, being a king in Chicago means nothing if he's still haunted by the ashes of Ghost's empire in New York. The last hidden detail worth mentioning is the way music plays into this shift. If you listen closely, the score in key moments carries samples and beats reminiscent of the original Power series. The music becomes darker, sharper, more reminiscent of the New York vibe. This is no coincidence. Music in the Power universe has always mirrored the emotional undercurrent of the story, and these familiar notes remind us that Tommy's world is circling back to where it all began. So when you put all these pieces together, the wardrobe callbacks, the dialogue hints, the visual framing of New York, the Easter eggs about Ghost and Tariq, and even the score, you realize Tommy's trip isn't just a plot twist. It's a carefully planned return that symbolizes the clash between who he was and who he's trying to be. The hidden details don't just suggest a change of scenery. They scream that the past and future are about to collide, and Tommy is standing right in the middle of it.